What's up, folks? Out here in the garage tonight, doing a few more things on the Tour X. I just figured I'd do another update. This will be part two. Let's start from the back and we'll work our way to the front. This is mostly going to be kind of just a rambling video, just kind of going over all the things that I've discovered and things that I'm working on. So, like I said, starting with the back, we're going to address let's actually go all the way back. So here's the bracket, the custom bracket for the saddlebags. It was outfitted with Kawasaki Nomad bags. So this is the custom bracket that was made for it. I'm not going back with those bags because I really don't like them, and I'm going to go with a 40-liter Vikings bag. It's a hard case bag. It kind of matches the contour of the bike, and it gives you more modern. Um, it's lockable. You don't have to have the key all the time. You can leave it unlocked. You can lock it. It's weather sealed. It's got pockets inside it. The whole thing is a lot better. It's got a quick detach on it. So what I'm going to end up doing is I don't know if I'll keep these or if I'll have to remove these. But then I'll just, when I buy the bags, just measure, and then I'll have to drill some new holes and replace these. So this is the bracket. It just utilizes the factory mounting points. It's just a custom made bracket, and nothing too crazy there. But I don't have the bags yet. That's going to be the last thing I do. Moving up to under the seat, the suspension on this bike. So it was dragging a bunch. With it dragging, it with the saddlebags, the fairing has added weight, but that's not going to affect the rear suspension, or it shouldn't. Um, but the settings, it was on like 4, and so on the way these shocks work, the suspension shock works on the Excelsior-Henderson, you have 1 to 7, and then you have a dampener screw here as well. Uh, I've got it all the way up to 7 based on the manual, the owner's manual. So having the most weight, you want it up to 7, and then the dampening screw, basically you just have to tune it. So I've got it all the way to 14. It goes from 1 to 14. It has marked on here hard and soft. So I've got it all the way up to 14, which is the hardest dampening setting. And then I'm just going to load it up basically, and then ride it and soften it as need be. So that is that on the suspension. One last note for that is to adjust the actual, not the dampening, but the actual suspension height, more or less. You need one of these tools to make it a lot easier. And you can get these from ehparts.net. And if this can focus, there's the part number. But they're on there. It was I think at some point, it's got the Riders Club logo on here, so I think it was a gift deal at some point. But Mike's got them for sale, and if you have an Excelsior-Henderson, you really need one of these. The factory setting, I believe, is 2 and 4. So 4 clicks of the dampening and 2 here. That's just for one rider, a solo rider, with no added accessories or anything like that. My other bike, which is, I've got it set up as a solo rider right now. I've got it on 4, setting 4, and I believe the dampening is at 2, and it rides really good. I like that. So moving on, I just got the tank back on tonight. I haven't got this portion here. I think I'm going to end up replacing an isolator, really. There's one on the bottom, there's one here, and then there's a plate that goes over. I've actually got them right here with me. A plate that goes over, and they sit in here. But the isolators are pretty worn out, and they're cheap enough to just replace. Same here, there's isolators in here as well. The reason I took the tank off was because, one, I had to reroute some of the wiring for the extended bars because I put 14-inch bars on. These originally have a beach bar style bar on there. But like I said in the first video, it really bothers my shoulder after a few hours. So from 12 to 16 inches is kind of perfect for me. The new throttle cables, they're plus 4 inches. So these are, like I said, 14-inch bars. They work on my other bike that is over at mics right now getting worked on. It's got 16-inch bars. So if you have anything over the factory height, you can get those brand new from ehparts.net as well, and those are great. Um, New isolator mounts for the motor up here. I just put those on when I first bought the bike. Put new heel-to-toe shifters on here as well. These are just off of Amazon. I think I paid like $50 for them, but it takes up all the slack. So if you know much about Excelsior-Hendersons, and if you're watching the video, I'm sure you do, typically these have a lot of slack back and forth. And with these aftermarket ones, there's no slack. There's no vibrations. Everything is really, really tight. And I like that because typically if you have the factory one on there, whether you have heel to toe or just the one, when you're idling or driving, it can make a rattle and it's just a racket. So, and I'm sure it wears out the bushings. And I know this bracket here is also prone to cracking. So having everything good and tight should keep that from happening. Moving on. So I run into a couple of issues. So I got the lowbrow customs cables. The brake cable, I think it's a 46-inch. It's perfect. I was actually working on bleeding the brakes, but that is at the very front of the bike, so we'll cover that last. But the new cables are on, and they're great. However, the longest one they had for, in general, because this has got a hydraulic clutch, the longest one they had was like 54 inches. And then with the fittings, you gain about another inch, about 56 inches. Well, it's not long enough, unfortunately. You can see here, it's just not. It should be able to run through here, go down, come out here, and then follow the chassis line down and goes into the, which is basically like a primary, but it's, this is where the clutch goes into, the clutch line goes into, and that's where you can bleed it. I'm going to end up just keeping this as a spare because I've got 3 of these motorcycles now. But I'm going to have to get another one custom made from another company because Lowbrow Customs is out of stock on the rest of their stuff. So that's unfortunate, but I'm waiting on the front fairing to get painted, so I've got plenty of time. I'm just going to order another one and move on. So I put a new radio in. This is just a It's just a budget radio. I just want it for Bluetooth, really. I don't have the antennas hooked up or for anything like that for the radio. I just don't need it. This is the custom switch panel. The guy who actually had the bike customized this way, he had this custom switch panel made up because this is a Harley Davidson fairing. It's from 1996 or 1997 to 2013. The bars would have sat into this recess a little bit and it just would have been totally different. So he ended up having to make this. So let's go over what all these switches do. So turning the accessory on. By the way, this bike has almost 16,000 miles. You've got the main power switch. So this turns on the switch panel. Here's the fan. So it's basically set up most important left to right. So obviously the power switch, the fan, which is most important to keep these have cooling issues, so you definitely need to run the fan all the time. Here is the lights, ditch lights or road lights, whatever you want to call them. And then here's for the radio, which it's already flipped on, so you can just turn the radio on. I don't have any speakers hooked up just yet because they're still waiting on them to come in the mail. But I didn't hook it up as a hardwire, so as soon as you turn the switch on, it doesn't come on. I wanted that way it didn't get left on and cause an issue. So if you shut it off, the main switch, the whole radio turns off. But if you turn it back on, the radio doesn't come on. So it doesn't draw power or anything like that. So that's just the way I decided to keep it wired up or wire it up. Because before, as soon as you turn the switch on, the radio would come on. And if this switch was on and this switch was on, the radio was on. And I didn't like that. Back up to the bars. Got new grips. This brake lever was a little bent, so I replaced that. Same on this side. This is a new grip as well. This is the original clutch lever. You can get these brand new from ehparts.net as well. Moving on to the back, or to the very front, we'll talk about the fairing. So like I said, this is a Harley Davidson Batwing fairing for like an Ultra Glide or Electra Glide, or maybe I'm thinking of Ultra Classic and Street Glides. This is the fairing, inner fairing anyways. Like I said, the outer fairing is getting repainted right now. Let me turn that accessory off so we don't lose some juice here. So the way this got modified, uh, I just replaced this one because the other one was kind of cracked and wore out and sun faded and scratched, and it just needed to be replaced. So you can see here, this is where the original Harley Davidson bars would have sat. So it would have sat in and down quite a bit. This part had to be trimmed. I think it sat down about this far. I had to trim that, and then a portion of this side of the fairing had to be trimmed as well. Not a big deal. This bracket here is the original windshield bracket. So the guy who originally customized and upfitted this bike utilized this, which is really neat, and then also utilized the Harley Davidson inner bracket for the fairing, which would be necessary, would make sense. But he was also able to figure out how to integrate the factory, the Excelsior-Henderson factory windshield bracket, which I really like. This plate here is part of the structure of the updated, not updated, but the upfitted fairing. As you can see in here, that plate is bolted to the actual rigid frame, or the rigid fork, and then it extends. Typically this would sit back farther, and it would mount up where that plate is mounted up. However, to make all this work, they push this out because the fairing sits out, lines up the headlights. Moving back up, here is the brain, if you will, of the fairing situation. The way this is all wired in, obviously, this is kind of where even the headlights, a lot of the factory wiring is also now tied into this as well. It wouldn't be hard to put this bike back to original, and I'm glad that they didn't do anything to prevent it from that. Now, will this bike ever be put back to original? Not while I have it, but it's cool to know that you could if you really wanted to. Obviously, there's some custom work that's been done in here to make the radio fit. My plans, I've got some speakers that are going here. I've got some tweeters that are going to go in here. And typically on a Harley, these would be gauges. But I'm actually going to put in some 4-inch speakers here as well. The guy who originally upfitted the bike didn't have speakers here. It was just a mesh lining here, which you can see in one of the previous videos I made. And it's just mesh, and it just looks kind of cheap, and I didn't like it. And there's a spot here. I think I figured out how I can mount the 4-inch pod, so get a little bit more sound out of it, and that'll be good. And I haven't, obviously without the speakers, haven't done the finished wiring there. The speakers should be in the next couple of days. There was a weird L bracket here, and he had a cigarette lighter mounted here. He had a GPS plugged in. And I just deleted all that. I'm not interested in any of that. So I deleted it, went on Amazon, bought a nice, basically a 12 volt. So through the little sight glass, you can see the power voltage, battery voltage. You can flip that up. You've got 2 USB ports and a quick C or fast C, however you want to call it, micro C port. There's plenty of charging, plenty of power on this bike, which Excelsior-Henderson's originally did not have. They were just bare bones. To get a front view of it, like I said, the new front fairing is out getting painted. It should be done end of this week. So I'll continue to do updates as we go. When the speakers come in and I get all that up, I'll do a final update before I put the fairing on and go from there. Down here to the brakes. So I have been bleeding these brakes all day, to the point where I actually called Mike at Valhalla Motor Works, who owns Parts, because I could not get these bled, and I still can't. So he advised to use basically a syringe. Well, The only one my local parts store uh, had was a 20 milliliter, and I think he uses a 90 milliliter. And the only ones I could get on Amazon was a 100 liter. So I've got those coming. They should be here Sunday. And basically, you just hook this syringe up to your line, um, pump the brakes, and then you'll draw the fluid through. Being that the reservoir is so high up on the bike, it's really hard to get all the air out. So that is an issue I'm running into right now, and I'm imagining I'm going to run into that same issue with the clutch as well when I get the new line. But with the syringes, that's how Mike does it, and that's how I'm going to do it too. But as far as that goes, this is pretty much it for the update on the Tour X. For those who don't know, it's a 1999 Excelsior-Henderson Super X. It was originally all black, raven black, just like this one here. And then it was custom painted and custom upfitted as the Tour X. I just purchased it last month and doing some updates to it to kind of bring it up to the 21st century and make it more enjoyable. So that's where we're at right now. If anybody has any questions, drop them in the comments and continue to stay tuned in, and I'll have more updates coming as the parts roll in and as I get the work done. And we'll do this thing together. So I appreciate you watching.